It was up to Brenda to save her. In the hospital garden, Brenda sat on a bench and looked down at the contact information on the business card from that lawyer. After hesitating for a few seconds, she dialed the number. "Hello? This is Mr. Tripp speaking." The male voice on the other side of the phone was very formal. "Mr. Tripp, hello. This is Brenda Strong." She lightly bit her lower lip and clenched her fists. "I've thought about the arrangement you mentioned yesterday." "Yes, Miss Strong. What's your answer?" "I'm open to the arrangement if the bank says your check is good." She figured if the check went through, maybe she could get enough money to save her grandma before the scam was exposed. "Okay. Please let me know where to meet you. I will bring the agreement to you for signature." Brenda gave him the address of a coffee shop near the hospital. Not long after she sat down in the coffee shop, Mr. Tripp walked in wearing a black tailored suit. He nodded at her expressionlessly. "Hello, Miss Strong." "Mr. Tripp, please take a seat." Brenda nodded at him. He sat across from her and took out the document from his briefcase. "This is the marriage agreement. Please read it over. If there are no problems, please sign here." Brenda took the document and opened it to get a sense of the trouble she was getting herself into. Brenda looked over the agreement. Was she really going to sign it? If so, she promised to marry Cameron Kent. But she didn't believe this arrangement was real. How was the lawyer trying to scam her? She couldn't tell, but was desperate for the money. Her hand holding the pen could not help but pause. A cold glint flashed across the lawyer's eyes behind his glasses. "Looks like you haven't really thought this through." Seeing he was about to take back the agreement, Brenda panicked and held on to the document tightly. Her future was filled with uncertainty and fear. But when she thought about her grandmother, who was still lying in the hospital and waiting for surgery, she might go to jail for being in some sort of scam, but at least she'd have the money. Brenda bit her lips. "I'll sign." Without hesitation, she signed her name at the bottom of the last page. A trace of satisfaction flashed across the lawyer's eyes as he put away the signed document. "Since the contract is signed, then you are Cameron Kent's fiancé now. I will now arrange the marriage certificate to make things official." "Okay." Brenda paused for a moment and asked, "When can you give me the money?" The lawyer took out a check and placed it on the table. "This is still the $1 million deposit from yesterday. After you officially become Cameron Kent's wife, Richard Kent will transfer the promised employment money into your account." Brenda picked up the check, and her hands trembled in excitement. There is no need for the other money, as long as this check clears. This money was more than enough for her grandmother's surgery and long-term treatment. "The terms of the agreement will be honored, whether you want the additional money or not." Hearing him say this, Brenda sensibly shut her mouth. "If there's nothing else, I'll be going." Mr. Tripp stood up. "Mr. Tripp, can I ask, why did you choose me for this arrangement?" She remembered the man she saw at the hotel entrance last night. He was handsome, noble, and cold. She didn't believe a man like that would want to marry her, but she just signed a document saying she would marry him. What kind of scam was this? "I am only responsible for Richard Kent's affairs and never ask for reasons." With that, Mr. Tripp left. Brenda smiled at the check in her hand. She immediately went to the bank to cash it. Her hands trembled as she handed it over to the teller. She wondered if she would get arrested for check fraud or something, but the teller deposited the money into her account with no questions asked. It worked. She got the money. After a smooth trip to the bank, Brenda rushed back to the hospital and paid for her grandmother's operation. As soon as the fees were paid, the surgery got underway. It was as simple as that. The operation was very successful. When she saw her grandmother safely being pushed out of the operating room, Brenda felt completely relieved. Everything was going to work out just fine. 2 days later, Brenda received a call from Mr. Tripp asking her to go and get a marriage certificate. So, she really did have to marry someone named Cameron Kent. She couldn't sleep the night before, wondering what her future now held. She wondered if another man named Cameron Kent would greet her at the Civil Affairs Bureau. What would he be like? What would their arranged marriage be like? Only in her dreams would it be the real, rich and famous Cameron Kent she saw on the news. The next day, she arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau and was greeted by Mr. Tripp. There was no sign of Cameron Kent at all. Noticing her doubt, Mr. Tripp said, "I can arrange the paperwork by myself. Mr. Kent doesn't need to be here." Brenda didn't know what to think. Who was she marrying? If it was the real Cameron Kent, maybe he'd be too busy to collect the marriage certificate. But why would a man like that want to marry a woman he never met? None of it made any sense. But she signed the agreement, spent the money, and couldn't back out now. Before Brenda arrived, Mr. Tripp had already arranged everything, so the process of getting a marriage certificate was very quick. She held the marriage certificate in her hands and felt like she was dreaming. Afterward, she went back to the hospital and saw that Grandma woke up. "Grandma, you're awake!" Brenda's eyes lit up. She ran over to hug her grandmother and sobbed, "I've been so worried about you." Her grandmother hugged her tenderly. "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to scare you. I was worried about you. Why did you suddenly move out?" When Grandma realized that Brenda moved out, she was so anxious she had a heart attack. I wanted to be closer to work, that's all." Brenda lied. She didn't want to tell Grandma that Aunt June kicked her out, in case her heart couldn't take the news. "Why so suddenly?" "I wanted to tell you, but when I saw you sleeping so soundly, I didn't want to wake you up." "Is your new place safe? I need to know my grandbaby is safe, you know." "Grandma, don't worry. I'm renting an apartment with a female colleague of mine. It's very safe. There's hot water and heating. It's really comfortable." Brenda remembered how cold and heartless Aunt June and Uncle Wyatt had been to her and Grandma. So she said, "Grandma, why don't you move in with me? Let me take care of you." "You have to go to work. How can you have time to take care of me?" "I can hire 2 nurses to come over and take care of you." "You just started working. You can't afford that level of care." Brenda wanted to tell Grandma she had enough money in her bank account for them to live well, but she didn't know how to explain the source of her new income. She didn't even understand it herself yet.
To listen to the full audio series, install the Pocket FM app now.
Pocket FM. Download the app now.